Over a month or so ago, Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi was released in theaters, and has caused quite a divide in the fandom, with a good number of people leaving the theaters disappointed. I find myself on that side of the fandom. I left the theater disappointed. Now, I'm going to be quickly reviewing the movie before getting to the main point of the video, being the rewriting of the trilogy. And in order to demonstrate the difference between my trilogy and Disney's, there are going to be spoilers. There are specific things in the movie that I took issue with, making this necessary. So I had little problem with the cinematography and acting for the most part. It appears to be fine. Keyword being appears. The first issue I have is the comedy. The overuse of slapstick comedy, as well as the feeling of shoehorned in quips, not dissimilar to those found in the Marvel movies, took me out of the experience. The other thing was the interactions between Admiral Holdo and Poe Dameron. I do not understand why the plans were not disclosed to Poe, or anyone else for that matter. He was also treated like a pet by both her as well as Leia. Don't get me started about Finn and Rose. The final major thing that really annoyed me was the big reveal of who Rey's parents are. And as it turns out, Kylo Ren says that they are nobodies. This, of course, is supported by the director Rian Johnson and actress Daisy Ridley. This does not make sense to me. The idea is that anyone can be a Force user. Fair enough, but that is not what Star Wars is about. It is admittedly a large part, however, the other large part is the focus on the Skywalker family. I do not think that she should be the central character if she is not a Skywalker. Now don't misunderstand me. I do not hate the idea of a strong female lead. That is just wrong. I don't care who leads so long as the character is good. Rey is also not a good character. She's a Mary Sue. She's a character that is young, incredibly powerful, without moral flaws, and overcomes every single obstacle that she encounters. This is boring. With all that out of the way, I think that I can make a Star Wars sequel trilogy better than Disney. This video is just going to be a breakdown of the basic concepts and ideas of this trilogy. And as a heads up, as big of a Star Wars fan as I am, I'm not really acquainted with all of the expanded universe. So forgive me for not incorporating them into this overview. I'm just working with what I know and what feels right. Now, first things first, characters. For the most part, I don't mind the roster that they have already created, but I feel like the characters are lacking. They aren't distinct enough. Let's start with Finn. He's a former stormtrooper, a programmed stormtrooper. For this reason, he should be lacking in emotion. He's cool and collected for the most part, but will reach his breaking point if pushed. He is incredibly competent and willing to kill, but he can tell that something isn't right, and it wore on him. This is the work of the Force. My Finn is Force sensitive, but instead of using a lightsaber, he opts for using a blaster, curving the bolts to their targets. Next would be Poe. Now, I honestly like Disney's Poe, but I would make some additions to his personality. He's focused and maintains a good level of composure. However, on top of the winning at all costs mentality, he's also self-sacrificing. If it comes down to failure, he will give his life in order to win. Kylo Ren is an enigma. I would not make his motivations the same as what The Last Jedi made it, and ruined the character of Luke Skywalker. He is competent and well-trained, but his anger and hatred, as well as the internal conflict, are what keep him from being truly formidable, despite his appearance. And lastly, we need to talk about Rey. I do want to make her strong and fierce, but she needs flaws. Rey is very morally centered and incredibly powerful. I think that it would be best if we scrapped this. Instead, we need to make her Kylo Ren's foil, his mirror in a sense. To do this, I think that the temptation to the dark side should pull strongly on her, mirroring how the light prevents Kylo from truly being evil. She should have a mean side to her, and that should be evident. Rey should also revel in excitement. Her character is one that is born out of the tragedy of abandonment, and that should be obvious. First, let's age her up, so that she experienced the tragedy when she was entering her teen years, say 13 or 14. She's taken under the wing of the leader of a group of scavengers who recently lost his own daughter to the war between the New Order and the New Republic. She, growing up in unruly conditions for 9 years, adopts an abrasiveness, exemplified in a Cockney accent. However, she is also a woman, an attractive one at that, and uses her sexual power over men to command them in her group. She's competent but has a tendency to be cruel. Ultimately, I like the idea of a romance between Finn and Rey, but I would tease the audience where she plays Poe as well, leading him on, just because that is what she did on Jakku. She really does want Finn, though, mainly because he is the unattainable one. She can't really get to him, and that infuriates her. Finn reciprocates those feelings, but because he spent so much time without emotions, he doesn't know how to respond or how to approach her. There's an interesting dynamic here, Rey being high in emotion and Finn being somewhat calloused. I feel that it would be interesting to see the two balance each other over the course of the sequel trilogy. The second thing that has to be addressed is the setting, both physical and political. Something that bugged me in The Force Awakens was that nothing really changed since the last installment. A new authoritarian order has taken over the galaxy again, and there's a small insurgency on the back foot trying to overthrow them. In the prequels, there was the descent into that authoritarian regime from what was supposedly a free republic. In my sequel trilogy, I would make it so we are trapped between two sides of imperial order and free republic. Neither side would have the upper hand, and the galaxy is in turmoil because of it. This would further affect the characters, their motivations, and their place in the story. That is the political side of things. When it comes to the physical, they should be as different as they can be from other settings seen in the franchise. Show us more exotic and colorful locations. Show us busy urban locations. Show us different species of aliens. We've seen deserts, we've seen temperate rainforests, and we've seen frozen tundra. We've seen a fire world, 2 water worlds, a very busy city, and an open field. We should explore the vast expanse of this galaxy, and at the very least, if any of these sorts of settings are reused, things need to be filmed differently. Third thing is the theme. What are the overarching themes of the Star Wars franchise? One of them is the connection of family, Luke and Leia and Vader, Obi-Wan and Anakin as brothers, Anakin and Padme being romantic, despite the execution of this romance being poor. The other theme is that of good conquering evil. This is very important. However, I want to twist this theme. I've heard of this thing called the Grey Jedi, this sect of Jedi that walk the line between the dark and the light. The idea of the balance of the Force is one that I want to explore. The way that I see the light and dark is that it is, at its core, mercy versus cruelty, mercy being good and cruelty being evil. This has been manifested as a physical war between sides, rebels versus the Empire, Jedi versus Sith. I think that the balance is really something that exists within the individuals. All of these characters that have been mentioned need to find this balance within them. And that is what truly will make them wholly good in the end, finding the balance within themselves. This also works within the dynamic of order and freedom, where freedom is curbed and cruelty is adopted in the pursuit of freedom. Contrasting this is the idea of order being sacrificed to gain the upper hand in the battle to institute order. Either side of this conflict dips into the themes of cruelty and mercy in order to win. These themes would be centered and dissected at different parts of the trilogy. Lastly, the plot. Now, I don't want to go too far into depth, because I plan on doing dramatic readings of each episode in the future, going into the specifics, and this video is long enough as it is. But if I were to give a brief outline, the trilogy would be a demonstration of these characters finding balance as the galaxy does, finding the balance between mercy and cruelty, between order and chaos, dark and light. Star Wars thus far has shown us anything but balance, despite that being a core theme in the franchise. It has mainly demonstrated a cycle, good conquering evil, evil winning over good, and back again. That is, I guess, a balance of sorts, but it is a balance that creates a constant war. That isn't exactly good, is it? Balancing the Force should mean that peace is achieved, and that is the journey that this trilogy goes on, from eternal chaos into long-lasting peace. But that is just my take. Let me know what you think. Leave any criticisms or ideas for the revised trilogy in the comments below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe for more Raymo rewrites.